What's going on, guys, and welcome back once again. So instead of just the standard blurple video that I'm sure we're all sick and tired of seeing because it's getting a little redundant, kind of like Bucky format with green steel, I wanted to take a slightly different approach because we've been seeing a trend popping up of, do you play one jump ahead? Should you play this card? Should you play 9 ramp cards on 2, or is 8 sufficient? So I'm not a math major, so maybe I'm slightly off on it, but between using a couple different hypergeometric distribution calculator, that's a mouthful, resources online, I tried to break it on down and look into a few options, and those being playing the 8 ramp cards, being 4 TPO, 4 sail, playing 9, where you have the 4/4, but then also one jump ahead, and then also if you're playing just the 8 with 2 develop your brains. Obviously, more develop your brain is going to make those numbers higher, as well as playing develop your brain with the 9 is obviously going to be the most efficient way. That's just how it is. That shouldn't need too much explanation. My main thought here was which way statistically is more consistent. 8 with the 2 develop or the 9 ramp cards. And again, that doesn't mean you can't play develop with 9 ramp cards. You absolutely can. And that doesn't mean you have to play develop with the 8. So I wanted to just kind of break it on down and look into it. So a lot of numbers here, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it. So I did in your first 7. So in other words, you open your 7 cards, you have your 8 ramp, your 9 ramp. Then mulliganing 1, 2, and 3, and 4 was kind of redundant because if you don't have ramp, you're mulliganing minimum 5, probably 6 or 7 if you don't have ramp. So mulliganing 5, 6, and 7 felt like the only calculations that even matter. Anything, the rest is all a moot point because if you don't have ramp, you're not mulliganing only 3. Just you're not going to do it. And then if you don't open your ramp, what are the odds to draw it by turn 2 if you're on the play or if you're on the draw? So a few of these numbers, and it's not just adding 15% to 65%. That's not how that works. It means 15% out of the 35% of the time that you don't open it, you will still get there. So I've adjusted percentages as well as all the different things. So on the far left, we see 8 ramp, 9 ramp, 8 ramp with 2 develop, meaning you miss ramp, but you hit your develop. So in your first 7, you have a 65% chance to hit ramp. 8% out of that 35, you won't have your ramp, but you will hit a develop. 5% if you mulligan 5, 5, 4. It was rounding it for me, so I just went with rounded numbers. So do keep that in mind. All these numbers are within a 2%, or within a 1% margin of error because I rounded them. So when we look into that, then, so as we get to the far right, your odds to hit turn 2 ramp when you open just develop, 39%. Why is that? Because, well, turn 1, you're on the play, you don't get a draw, but you have your develop, right? So if you open your develop, and then you have between develop and your draw for turn 2, you have 3 extra chances to get to the ramp. When you figure in those 3 extra chances, that's where we get to the 8 ramp adjusted percent on the draw, and as well as like your 8 ramp 2 develop adjusted percent on the draw. So the 15%, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, so I'll try and slow that back down. Just finishing with the 8 ramp. So again, in your first 7, 65% of the time you'll have it. Then if you don't have it, you're going to be mulliganing. So we're going to look down at our 4th row. The 4th row is the adjusted percent on the draw or on the play. On the play, 15% of the time without ramp, you'll still get to your ramp. So you take the 35% that you missed, and then you multiply it by the 15% that you make it there, and then you add that number back to the original 65%. So with 8 ramp, you have a 70% chance to just look at your opening 7, keep all 7, and get to your ramp. And you might, that's pretty good, but at the same time, saying 3 out of 10 games you're okay missing ramp, you're probably not going to win a whole lot. You're not going to want that. So getting us to mulliganing 5, 6, 7. So if you're playing just the 8 cards, realistically, if you mulligan 6, 90% of the time, you're going to get to your ramp regardless. So that's kind of a number that you can stick to, and that's why you see so many players, well, mulliganing 6, because just statistically, by the time they get to turn 2, they will have ramp 90% of the time. On the draw, obviously this is going to be a little bit higher because you have one more card. So we see with the first 7, obviously it's going to be a bigger increase, but the more cards you get, it's going to be marginal, and the closer you get to 100%, the lower it goes, because it's not a straight curve, it's an exponential curve down upward, exponential. Not, is that linear? Again, I'm not a math major, so keep that in mind too. But I personally, with just the 8 ramp, I really like develop. So to me, I was looking more at develop versus the 9 ramp. So with develop, again, you have 3 chances on the play to hit ramp where you wouldn't without develop, and on the draw, you draw for turn 1. You have develop for 2 more hits, and then draw for turn 2. So you have 4 more additional chances to get to your ramp on the draw. So when we look at that, you have your 8 ramp plus 2 develop adjusted percentages. In your first 7, 74%. Again, the first 7's pretty moot because we see a high of 82% on the draw with your develop, and I'm not okay missing ramp 1 out of 5 games. Personally, I'm not. I want a minimum 90%, or I'm not even going to consider it. And that's kind of where you look at without develop. You have to mulligan 6 or 7 cards just to get to that 90% range, and that's. Sometimes you want to keep a card. Sometimes, you're like, oh, maybe I want to hold on to this. And statistically, it's going to be in your favor to play these other ratios. So when we look at develop versus no develop on the play, right? So on the play in your first 7, I'm going to disregard that column because, well, quite frankly, it doesn't, like I said, if 70%, 82%, I'm not okay with those numbers. So when we look at mulliganing 5 on the play, on the draw, it doesn't really matter. Again, there is a margin of error because I rounded the numbers, but between 8 ramp, 2 develop, or 9 ramp, statistically, you're within 1% of each other the entire way. So now it's pretty much a moot point, right? So as far as develop versus the 2 develops versus the 1 jump ahead, where's your uninkable count? Do you want the additional song versus the action that can help you dig later game? Do you want the not knowing what you're inking and then you're trying to dig for it unknowingly that you already inked it? There's a lot to play in here. And then there's things like, are you playing Ursula, where you can Ursula target a ready 2-cost character, tap it down, and then play the 1 jump ahead for free that way. Like there's different pros and cons to each of them, but I guess looking into it like this, I think either you play develop or you play one jump ahead, and you can play develop with the 1 jump ahead as well. I'm just saying that if you're not playing 1 jump ahead, you should play a minimum of 2 develop your brain just to be able to get to where you want to go pretty consistently. And then if you're mulliganing 6, 93% of the time you're still going to get to that ramp, which is a number that I'm 100% okay with. So let's look into Blurple a little bit more, right? Like, why is Blurple the best deck? Why? And, well, it's pretty straightforward. You have the best consistency in the game, and that's from things like Finders Keepers. It's from things like Second Star to the Right. Like, you just have these huge draw a bunch of cards, and that's what's going to propel you into being able to win. Then it's also the toolbox. Like, we're seeing Emerald Chromacon popping up a lot. So what options do you have for Emerald Chromacon? Well, you can play Hideaway, which is a 2-cost out to it, which means later game you can double it up with a character. Like, once you get to like 6 ink, so we're talking like turn 5, you can play Hideaway, get rid of Chromacon, still have 4 ink, put out a threat that way. So all of a sudden, you're able to out it and play characters. Otherwise, there's a few character options you have. There is the Wasabi, which we see being pretty popular, 3/3 body, 4 cost. So that means you play it on turn 3, which turn 3 Chromacon costs 3. It's a right on curve play. So you can do that. It gives your opponent a lore, and that's the trade-off. Do you want to give them a lore from Wasabi? Do you want to play Judy Hops and give them 2 cards? But then it's also a 2/3 quester who also only costs 3, which means you could potentially miss ramp on 2 and still have a turn play on the curve. That's her benefit. The giving your opponent 2 cards is by far the worst of these 3, but being able to play her on curve even when you miss ramp is a big benefit, and she does quest for 2. Otherwise, you have Alice Adrift, where instead of giving them a lore or 2 cards, you give it to them as ink, just like Hideaway would. So also questing for 2, and when she quests, you give -2 strength to one of your opponent's characters, which can come up for some different niche scenarios as well. So it comes down to those 4 cards as like your options. There's also Cusco, but to me, Cusco is too late of an answer. By the time you would play Cusco, you're probably going to lose anyway. You might push it off a turn or two, but you're still probably going to be too far behind that it's not going to matter at that point. So I don't like Cusco as an option for it. It comes down to me truly between Alice and Wasabi. I think these are truly the 2 options you have to go with. Do you want to give them the ink, or do you want to give them the additional 1 lore? I prefer Alice because that's a deck that, having played it too, I don't want to give them 1 more lore. They already can get so close, and there's games where they get to 19 by the time you come back and win. And if you give them that 1 extra lore early, guess what? 19 plus 1 is 20. So personally, I would lean towards Alice as far as item removal goes. Another big thing, the elephant in the room, if you will. Actually, elephant's not insane in the mirror. I truly don't think it's that great. I think late game, like bouncing your Hades, your Elsas, your Monstros, things like that, I think it's fantastic. But probably one of the most important things in the mirror match is turn 3. The turn 3 play. So are you on the play or are you on the draw? Like on the play, it's fine to go Genie because you can go like Genie into Elsa. On the draw, you never want to go Genie unless they like don't have Basil. They don't have another evasive on board to where they're going to be able to like slap Elsa down and take out your Genie. So Genie on the draw is just very poor, and Genie in general in the mirror match is not insanely good. There's very few scenarios, in my opinion, where Genie is good in the mirror match. So turn 3 in the mirror match, though, what cards can you play? Obviously, Genie is a 4-drop of choice. It's pretty much unanimous 4 copies of it across the board. Then in addition, you have, these are, again, not seeing a lot of play, but just some options to consider. Ben is something I played early in the format. I went away from it. I'm not going to go back to it, but it's a 4-drop card. 4/3 gives support. The support is actually insane, and it quests for 2, sorry. And if they want to tap it down with an Elsa, I mean, their best out in the mirror is going to be like have a Basil, tap it down with Elsa, quest Basil, boost Elsa, Elsa take it out, because Elsa's going to survive. Otherwise, they're not going to ram Genie or Dumbo into it because they're going to lose their Genie or Dumbo. So Basil plus Elsa is really their only clean out to it as far as a turn 3 play goes. Scrooge McDuck is a fantastic turn 3 in the mirror match. You have to weigh your pros and cons on uninkables when you're going this route, though. So there's concessions that you have to make to the deck that way. Iago can be a very strong turn 3 play in the mirror match, and you put them kind of in a spot where do you have the hypnotic deduction or do you not? So, or hypnotic strength, sorry. Do you have it to target the Iago and get it out? Because if you don't, the 4/6 body is absolutely huge, and sometimes in the mirror match when you have 2 of these, you slap one down, they answer it, you slap the next one down, and it just slows the game down so much because you get crazy trade value out of it through Elsas and Genies and all that good stuff. So even if they decide to not turn sideways at that point, if you have Elsa in your hand, you can force them to on your turn, so you can really make a big splash with an Iago. Something else that could be strong on turn 3, you have Kita, which helps you with ramp. She's probably going to be gone after 1 turn. The ward protects her, so you guarantee that ramp. And if she goes unanswered, she's actually very, very strong. You just got to weigh, is that worth it in that spot? And I've gone away towards no, but when she hits, she absolutely hits. In addition, Flynn, or not Flynn, sorry, just Ryder from Frozen 2. He's a 3/4 evasive, so something like a double evasive swing is going to take him out, right? Like Elsa plus Dumbo plus Genie. Otherwise, really their only clean answer, kind of like Ben, is Basil plus Elsa, because anything else, he has 3 strength, so he won't, I guess, Genie won't die from it, right? Genie will survive it, but then your Genie has 1 strength left, and you open up the door for an Elsa trade, where then you slap Elsa down, swing into it, he's gone, and if they try to Elsa into you, if they don't have a Belle or a second Elsa, well, they're going to lose their Elsa too, because that 3 strength actually puts in some work. Kind of like we were talking Genie on 3, for the same reason I don't like Dumbo on 3 whatsoever. And also speaking on Genie on 3, the other Genie on 3, the 3/5 unequable, non-evasive, he quests for 1, and then you can shuffle him into the deck and draw 3 cards. The 3/5 body is actually really good into the mirror match, I think. If you have the uninkable space, I think this is a card where it's kind of like Scrooge. It's uninkable, so you have to weigh out your options there, but it also can draw you 3 cards. So he has that added benefit in that regard. So you kind of got to weigh your pros and cons. Another matchup. So let's say blue-green quick now, right? Blue-green, I personally like to try to ramp decently aggressive early on. I don't want to keep too many cards in hand. I want to force them to not just have the Clarabelle shift, but to also have like the You're Welcomes to really answer my board. So putting them on that spot of you need multiple things to happen. You can't just hit the Clarabelle shift. I have a bunch of cards in my hand because I'm going to play greedily like that. No, I'm going to be pretty more aggressive, dump my hand more aggressively, and force you to have everything. And at that point too, I'm going to try to get to a point where all of a sudden I can start top decking things like Elsa's, Hades, and Monstro especially. Monstro in this matchup is absolutely an MVP, being a 6/8 body with Rush, being able to 2-for-1 their threats, whether it's John Silver's, Basil's, the Clarabelles, all these like 5/5 bodies, these 5/6 bodies, Hades being a 3/6 body, being able to 2-for-1 so many of them is just, it's such a strong play. So I really think Monstro is a huge benefactor in this matchup. And then also aggro is going to be a big issue, right? Like decks trying to go under Blurple. We see Amber Steel doing it pretty effectively. We see the Chroma Dogs, Sea Dogs, the dog decks doing it pretty effectively. And luckily on turn 1, we do have multiple challenger options, whether that's Rafiki, whether it's Royal Guard, different options that way. And then another one being Ursula, like a turn 4 Ursula, being able to target a Tiana, exert her, and then play your Into the Unknown for free is a very strong answer as well. Especially if you put down a threat on turn 3 after you ramp on turn 2. If you hit that Into the Unknown with the Ursula there, it's definitely not. I'm trying to think the best way to put it. Like versus aggro, I think that you can actually do pretty well versus it. At set championships today, I played against 2 Chroma Dog, or they weren't playing ChromaCon, but the Under the Sea Dogs. And I won both those matchups. I thought it was kind of ironic because last weekend I was playing that deck and I played against 6 Blurples on my way to winning, and then I played Blurple today and went against Dogs rounds 1 and 2. I did get the better of both of them, then I had a mirror match 3, ID'd round 4, beat Purple Steel in top 4, and then in the finals we worked out a deal where I got all of the prize packs between first and second because I had a playmat already. He wanted a playmat, so we worked it out to where we didn't even play the match, and it was just beneficial to everybody. But that's, I guess, trying to, like I said, not just throw a Blurple list at you and talk about it, but to talk a little bit more behind the scenes, I guess, of the deck. If there's other things you'd like to know, definitely let me know. And I do have a list I'm going to show. This isn't the list that I played. Unfortunately, I'm trying some things for the DLC, and 1, I want to try them further, and 2, I don't necessarily want them to catch on if they're going to end up working and staying in my deck. So I still wanted to bring you guys an updated list, though, that I think would be very strong, covers a lot of the things that we talked about here today. So like in that turn 1, like I said, Challenger Rafiki is such a strong card right now. So having like the Rafiki Basil, I actually like going 4-2 instead of a 3-3 split, which is pretty popular. The 8 plus the 2 develops. To me, I like that more. There's less uninkable cards in the deck then. I hate inking cards unknowingly, and then I'm trying to dig for it or play for it and not knowing that it's ever actually there. So I like the 8 plus 2 for my ramping section instead of the 9, something, again, we talked about in the video. Then your evasive package, like 4 Dumbo, 4 Genie, 3 Iago, 4 Elsas, 2 TikToks. This is pretty standard. It's something that, like, Iago's outed easy, but if it's not outed easy, it just wrecks games. And then TikTok also eats up the Hades. It really just puts a pressure on your opponent to be able to deal with your board, and I think it feels like a bad card, but at the same time it's a necessary bad card that can overperform at certain times. Elephant in there for late game bouncing your characters, otherwise versus Purple Steel, it's already a favored matchup, but Elephant just wrecks that matchup. The Alice Adrift is my answer for Chromacon. If you don't want to play towards items or respect it whatsoever, that's honestly fine as well. We'll see how the format develops over this next week and a half, but if you're going to go for a route like that, I think that Alice is the best option. Otherwise, then your Belle, your Elsa, your Ursulas, I think all that's pretty standard here. Maybe you'll see 4 Belle in a bunch of the lists, and then the top end having like the 4-1-2 is pretty common. In addition to the lineup down below that, I tried to dig a little deeper. I tested it a bunch, and to me, drawing 5 was far more valuable than digging 7, adding 2. The best thing about the dig is that Monstro can sing it by itself, but Second Star to the Right has just been so much better in testing. So I think if you're looking for Blurple into set championships for the DLC, things like that, this is a very, very strong list to go practice and try with. But again, kind of like when going over like matchups and things like that, if you're going to play Blurple for the DLC, 2 things have to be true. 1, you have to be very comfortable in the mirror match. If you're not comfortable in the mirror match, do not play this deck at the DLC. That's probably the best advice I can give you, because you're going to have mirror matches, and if you're not comfortable with it, play a deck that you're comfortable with that maybe is a little less good than Blurple, because you'll probably end up doing better with it if we're going to be honest. In addition to that, number 2, versus aggro. You have to be comfortable versus aggro. You're not going to win them all. You might not even win most of them, but you cannot go into those matches saying, I'm just going to lose this matchup if I play it. If that's your take on it, again, personally, I would say I would look towards playing a different deck. And not trying to be like rude about it, I just think that those are 2 things that if you're going to play this deck in a very competitive environment, such as a DLC, you have to be comfortable versus your bad matchup, aggro, and you have to be very, very comfortable in the mirror match. And if you're not comfortable in either one of those scenarios, I would probably test some other decks, and I do have plans to bring up a bunch of different decks, because this is where I'm leaning towards. For Milwaukee is playing Blurple, but at the same time, I'm talking with a friend Phil about a Purple Steel deck that kind of bouncing ideas off, and that's the deck I'm probably going to be testing the most over the next 2 weeks to see if it sways my opinion. Sea Dog's another deck that I might make a last minute switch to depending where the format's at, because I love that deck and I think it's in a fantastic spot. And I actually was talking to a friend today, my round 1 opponent, that I personally feel like I'd have a better chance to day 2 with Sea Dogs, but a better chance to do well with Blurple. And what I mean by that is less likely to make day 2 with Blurple, but if you make day 2, a better chance to go further, whereas Sea Dog's a better chance to make day 2, but a less likely chance to make it further, if that makes any sense. Outside of those 2, though, the Amethyst Emerald control deck is something that I really enjoy watching and seeing. I just don't know if a week and a half, 2 weeks is enough time for me to cram it and feel comfortable enough to play it. So it's probably going to come down to Purple Steel, Blurple, or Sea Dogs as far as which deck I end up going with. And I do have other ideas to bring to you guys, as well as weekly updates, things like that with everything else going on. But thank you guys for watching and listening to me ramble. Let me know how you feel, I guess, or if you have any further questions, because I know I'm out of breath and I can tell I rambled a lot in this video. So definitely let me know if I should explain things out a little bit more thoroughly, and I will happily do so down below. Thank you guys for watching, though, and as always, take care.